guys. I got straight up 1 o'clock here, so I want to respect your time and get going with this. So my name is Reginald Kuakaru. I call that my stage name. My true name is Reginald Martin, but Kuakaru is I just call that my Kemetic name, or I like to say, hey, it's my stripper name. It's what I do on stage. But with that being said, today I really wanted to talk about some ideas that are a lot of times in the Kemetic community, it's really, they are so misrepresented by people who really don't quite understand the biblical connections and the Kemetic science. So one of the things that I really enjoy getting into and studying and dissecting is the ideas and how the science connects not only to our modern day science and ideas that we have today and people are so-called discovering, but also to our spiritual concepts and what many of us were raised in as Christians. Now, I was born and raised Christian, so that is my focus on how Christianity connects to these things. Now, the Kemetic knowledge and spiritual science, it does connect to all three Abrahamic religions. So if somebody is versed in Islam and wanted to learn these ideas and connect them, I'm sure you'd be doing a great service for people in Islam and many Muslims around the world. So go have at it, please. But again, I come from the Christian perspective, so that's what I was raised in. So today we're going to look at the Kemetic spiritual science of resurrection, and I want to do that mainly because this is Easter is coming up, and people, of course, have their ideas about what Easter is about. But guys, I'll tell you right now that the ideas that we've been taught, and please understand, I'm sick and tired of arguing over whether or not Jesus is real, because ultimately what I recognize is that people are connecting to their spiritual experience within. As Christians, we just called it Jesus. So in that sense, our inner experience is very real. Now, whether or not the person existed, that's a whole nother story. And we get off on trying to convince people that Jesus never existed and stuff like that. Fine. For me, I don't believe in Jesus, but I know Christ. And that's what I want to really give you an elevated understanding of today, is that Christianity was really more thinking about spiritual ideas at an elementary level. So when we're talking about the Kemetic ideas, that is really taking them more to an elevated level, beyond the elementary stuff that Christianity was in the beginning trying to give everybody an entry into these ideas. So moving forward, so what you will learn today is what the resurrection meant as spiritual science before Christianity, the actual meaning of the words death, dying, and to die in the Bible, the vibrationally positive African spiritual science idea of gaining your salvation, which is, again, is Christianity twisted a lot of ideas that were really very beautiful and very powerful from the African science perspective. You'll also learn to move from elementary school belief in Jesus to how to apply the advanced spiritual science meaning of Christ in your everyday life. Okay, because these ideas were about really your total being. And when I say your total being, I mean your soul and your body, mind, soul, and body. So the total aspect of who you were. For a big picture perspective or a big picture overview of where I'll be going, this knowledge of the Kemetic science is really about consciousness and how consciousness manifests and inhibits, or not inhibits, becoming aware as a soul while in the body. Okay, so that's just the big picture. Now, for the ancient Africans, the journey of the soul was the true life that we live. So we get caught up in our modern day science as the body being the ultimate state of existence. Okay, but for the ancient Africans, existence started before we had a body. Okay, so our body came out of a whole nother level of being and experience before we even became into a body. So the physical body is a transitory state for the soul to learn from the ancient African perspective. So we're here, and we came here to learn and to be enlightened as a soul. Okay, so and when I say a soul, that means our consciousness. So at the consciousness level, we came to basically to be enlightened. Okay. So the Bible stories in Christianity originated from these ancient African teachings. Because of their ideas of the soul, their spiritual teachings were from a different paradigm than what we've been taught as Christians. Okay, so a totally different paradigm. So this sheds a new light on biblical gospels and the ideas of Jesus. So with what I'm about to share with you, we have to look at the Jesus stories concerning the ideas behind the words death, die, and dying. Okay. And guys, this is something I'm telling you, you probably have never even considered this idea. And most of us haven't that have been Christians. But when used in their ancient Greek and Kemetic connotation, it turns the exegetical or the interpretational significance almost completely upside down. So if you look at the Bible from the ancient perspective of how the Cometians looked at death and dying, and how the Greeks coded this information into the Bible, it's something totally different that we hadn't thought about, but it's very, very powerful. Okay. So in ancient metaphorical terms, the word to die in the Bible has a different symbolical meaning. Okay. And who is the dead also has a different meaning. Okay. And again, it's something that most of us have never considered. All right. So the ancient Kemetic concept of death, okay, was the soul giving its life of freedom and unlimited awareness in the metaphysical world. So again, let me repeat that. Is that for the ancient Africans, the soul was the life that we lived, not this physical body. This was just a transitory experience. But the real us and the real being is the soul, and that's where their teachings taught from. Okay, so the soul originated, and then the body came later. Okay, so the ancient Kemetic knowledge transmitted through the Bible about Jesus is really a collection of dramas and allegories of the soul's life and transition through the physical life. And again, this is vitally important to understand moving forward, that we're talking about the idea of what death is, what the perspective of the death is from, and who is dead. Okay. So another way to say this is that the biblical Jesus is actually about the journey of the soul, not about the physical person as we were taught in church. So basically, the church turned everything upside down when they did make the idea of Jesus or Yehusa. When they made that idea historical, they turned it and flipped everything over, and we got confused, and everybody's been confused since then. Okay, so we're looking at some different keys here to look at the Bible. So what I would like for you to do is, once we finish this, is to definitely go look at the Bible and look at these scriptures where they're talking about Jesus and raising the dead and doing the other miracles that he did, and look at him from a different perspective, and we'll go a little bit deeper into that. But the taproot of Jesus was, and the whole idea was first talked about in the Temple of Ptah in Egypt. Okay, so and it was about the eschatological phase, which is about relating to death, judgment, and the final destiny of the soul. Okay, so the whole story of Christ and Jesus is about the mystical figure of the mummy. Okay, the mummy is another key that is going to open up some ideas here for you. Okay, so everything that we're talking about in the Bible and the biblical gospels was about the symbolical idea of a mummy. Okay, and again, I'm going to explain a little bit on that later. Okay, so the knowledge of Osiris and the knowledge of Osiris will uncover really the biblical Jesus. So understanding really and truly what Osiris is about. And again, a lot of times we get so many of the mythological stories telling different aspects that we really don't understand what Osiris is about symbolically. And if you look at Osiris, pictures of him of Osiris, you'll see that he's wrapped up in one leg and basically only his hands are free. Okay, so again, that's a symbolical representation of ideas that are so deep words can't express them, and that's the way that the Medu Neter and a lot of the hieroglyphs, as the Greeks call them, they were really ideas in pictures. Okay, because the words that they were, or the ideas that they were expressing, were too deep for words. Okay, they were too complex. Okay. So to the ancients, the soul died, and as a higher level entity descending into the lower level of earth and physical matter. So that little statement right there gives us another idea of in ancient Egypt when they talked about the underworld. Well, if you're talking about from the perspective of the soul who's at a higher level, what would be the underworld? Okay. So right there, we're talking about something different that we really hadn't even thought about. The underworld is Earth. Where we're living right now is the underworld from the perspective of a soul. Okay. So from the ancient African perspective, the soul gave up its life to drop down into a physical body. When I say drop down, I mean to inhabit a physical body. So these ancient African spiritual science ideas were passed on to the Greeks, who coded these spiritual science secrets and these ideas into dramas and allegories that basically became part of the biblical gospels. Okay, so again, the soul is the level that we're talking about, and the soul is actually having to give up what it is in order to inhabit what we are as a physical body. Okay, so that, again, that's just a different perspective. So understand that the spiritual science knowledge was not originally meant for mass consumption. So we're talking about information that the initiates were first given. Okay, or people who wanted to be initiated into into this knowledge, into these ideas, were first given. So it wasn't meant for mass consumption. So it was meant for initiates into the secret cults that had their own secret slang language, so to speak. In other words, they called ideas by slang names, so the people who didn't understand the slang couldn't understand what they were talking about. Okay, that's what we've been getting in the Bible, but we've been looking at it from a historical perspective. So the origin of the biblical knowledge were the myths of ancient Egypt that expressed the secret concepts based on numerology and formulas, but expressed as mythological stories. So we're talking about really mathematical formulas that the mythology is expressing. Okay, and then those mythological stories is what the Greeks took and made their allegories from. Okay. And of course, the Christians looked at it as something literal and historical. Excuse me. So the Bible itself becomes infinitely more significant when taken as allegory than when it's read as history. So when people start to bashing Christians and biblical and the Bible and stuff like that, they just don't understand what it's about. Okay, a lot of times they start talking about a whole lot of things and telling people a whole lot of different ideas and bashing it, but never really knowing what the true story is. Okay, Understand the many Jesus stories of the Bible were actually about how the soul can transform aspects of you, the physical being, and become enlightened to connect with your God self. Okay. The ancient Egyptians called that the higher Ka. So let's look at the origin of the biblical allegories, which were a part of the ancient Kemetic Egyptian myths. And to better understand the deeper metaphysical meaning of the religious ideas like the cross, Christ, and Jesus. Okay. So these are all separate ideas. They are all, so the cross is a separate idea, Christ is a separate idea, but we were taught Jesus Christ, but it's three separate ideas, okay, originally. So let's first look at the idea of the cross, okay? So now understand that ancient African symbolism has many layers of meaning and many levels. So we can take one level, it can literally be a mental level, it could be a spiritual level, and it can be a physical level, okay? So what I'm going to be talking about here is actually the metaphysical level, so above our physical experience. And then also, this is very, very condensed, then it gets so detailed, it's incredible. But basically the cross is an idea of the elements basically crossing on two different planes, and those elements have to cross in order for physical matter to even be produced. So in order for our physical body to even be produced, these elements have to first cross to cause a reaction for it to even come into physical reality. Okay. So that's the basic idea of the cross. And I'm saying that is very, very basic. Okay. So what they looked at it was that in order for anything to exist or live, and again, their idea of living or life is a much, much broader idea than we have. We think of physical animals, plants, and things like that as the only living things. But to the ancient Africans, everything that was in existence was life. It was alive. It was conscious. It has its own consciousness. Okay. So there are elements needed to produce life. And again, I'm saying everything in the universe is alive, is conscious, is aware. So when we're talking about these elements, we've heard of them in astrology, talking about fire, water, earth, air. So those four elements are the four elements that needed to cross in order to produce physical reality. So that's the idea of the cross that we're talking about here. So when the soul enters the body, it is now dead, unaware, and entombed to now travel a cyclical path of multiple reincarnations. So this is where the concept of Osiris comes in. Osiris is wrapped up. So the thing that, excuse me, the being that was the soul actually gave up its freedom, its unlimited awareness, and its total being in order to be able to inhabit a physical body, in order to learn lessons. Okay. So again, the symbolic idea of Osiris is is basically that idea of being entombed. Okay. So explaining the spiritual science behind the myth. So the ancient spiritual science taught that the death of the soul on the cross, which is the meaning of fire, air, water, earth, and that produce matter, must occur to lift the lower entity or physical body to the higher kingdom and redeem it. Now remember, on the metaphysical plane of existence, the soul has unlimited awareness and freedom that is dumbed down when entombed in the physical body. Okay. So I explained a little bit about the cross already, and I always get a little bit ahead of myself on the notes, so it keeps me ahead on track here. But so when we're talking about Yehusa or Jesus, okay, as we know it today, it's the principle of the soul sacrificing its life and it is the meaning of actually, it's the Kemetic meaning of salvation. In other words, salvation is the ability of the soul to live another life or to be reincarnated, not to be saved from hell. So anytime that the soul the soul exits and it can prepare itself to live another life, it's saved. Okay, when it gets into that other life, it's saved. So understand that you are the saved right now. Okay, so you're living in this physical body. All right. It was expressing the science in a creative way. So this origin of the Greek biblical allegory of Iusa or Yeusa in Jesus sacrificed his life and died on the cross for the salvation of man. Okay. So when we're talking about the idea of Jesus dying on the cross, this was the science idea of it, is that in order for matter to exist, in order for your physical body to exist, this cross had to come together. And the being that was produced on that cross had to die and give up its life in order to inhabit the physical world. Okay. So when we're talking about Jesus dying on the cross to save man, that's what the spiritual science is about. Salvation, again, you got a chance to live another life. That was you being saved. Okay, from the ancient Kemetic perspective. All right. So again, I go into a little bit about Osiris. So Osiris, or Asar, is the Kemetic name for it. But it's symbolically the idea of the spark of God on earth that is buried in matter. So symbolically speaking, we have the spark of God buried inside us. The spirit bound up, the spirit is bound up or dead or unconscious in flesh or in the flesh of the body, but has the seed of spirit within it to transform. Okay. So the Egyptian mummy is the metaphor of the spirit in a tomb that is the physical body. Okay. So the physical body is the tomb for the spirit, because once it enters the body, it becomes less aware than what it was. It is no longer free like it was. So in reality, it's the essence of any man, woman, flower, or animal that exists. The crossing of elements, or the cross, proceeds all earthly existence. Anything that is here had to die on the cross first. An aspect of its spirit had to die on the cross first. That's just the science of it, okay? An aspect of God must give its life for earthly existence. So again, to die or to give its life is about the soul not being free like it was, and now not being as aware, okay? So Osiris became the symbol or archetype for the soul being entombed or mummified in the body. That's why you'll see Osiris basically wrapped up like it's one leg, like it's a mummy. That's what that means, okay? So the full consciousness of the soul is symbolically dead, asleep, or blind while in the physical body, okay? So see the Bible stories of Jesus raising the dead, healing the blind, etc., okay? So I guess I can I'll stop right here and see if there's any clarification that needs to be made here before I move on. So I'm about halfway done here. So any clarification of anything that I've said that might need to be done. Okay, no questions. I must be doing an okay job then. So all right. So So again, so now we'll get into the what was the pre-meaning of resurrection, okay? And this is where I also like to take it to not only understanding, getting the knowledge, but understanding how this works in your life, okay? That's really the most important thing to me, is that we understand how to use this knowledge, because if you can't practically apply it, it's no good. And people have talked about spreading knowledge for years. Spread knowledge, spread knowledge, spread knowledge. But there's no advancement being made by just spreading knowledge. It has to be able to be applied. Okay. So that's where I'm going with this. First, we must reorient our thinking to allegorical and more metaphorical rather than history about the biblical idea of death, dying, and die. Thank you, Juanita. Thank you very much. And let's see, again, in ancient Kemet, these words were in reference to the soul's journey into the physical world, not a physical person as we were taught in church. The secret language or slang, these were secret language or slang terms. So death, dying, blind, tomb, these were all literally slang terms, or as we would say it today, or they are encoded terms that have a double meaning. Okay, so the body is the tomb, but also paradoxically, the womb for the rebirth of the soul by learning through physical experience on its return to the noon. Okay. So once in the physical body, the soul must reawaken and be liberated. Okay. That's your job here now. You have to liberate your soul in a way. And there is a way that you can do that while you're in the physical. Okay. Done through the physical experience, when done through the physical experience, that causes one to listen to the call of the heart and assimilate physical experience. The heart connects the lower self buried in the tomb or mummy as Osiris to the higher self that is the aspect of the God self in mankind. Okay. So unlike Christianity taught, it's possible for everyone, man or woman, to reconnect, liberate, and elevate their consciousness and become a Christ that is connected to the God self. Okay. So when we're talking about liberation, the ancient Egyptians had two paths of liberation. One was the Christic path, where everything that you had to learn was all assimilated at once, and you immediately returned back or resurrected back, which is the original state of being of everything in existence. Okay. The other path was the Osirian path, where you had to go through, that was indirect, because you had to go through physical incarnations in order to experience and learn and for your consciousness to grow. Okay. Well, guess what path that we're on? Okay. We're all on the Osirian path right now. Okay. And that's, again, learning this information and gaining this knowledge, I hope, will help you live life more fulfilled, more fun, more free, okay, than the way that we had to try to live as Christians. All right. So you must consider the ideas of Yeusa, okay, or better known as Jesus, and Osiris, that they are natural functions, or they are names given to natural functions that the ancient Africans thought about. Okay, so when they're saying natural functions, that means the metaphysical functions too, not just the earthly functions that we're talking about. All right, so these aspects travel down from heaven, okay, to earth, and from earth back to heaven. Okay, so heaven we're talking about is just the metaphysical world, really. In ancient African spiritual science, the same functional aspects of nature had different names depending on the plane they operated on. So we hear Horus, Iusa or Yeusa, we hear Heru, we hear all these names talking about really the same function or same principle, but they're all at different levels. Okay, so Yeusa is at the universal level. All right, and Yeusa again is Jesus. So the statement will add clarity as you study down the road. I just wanted to introduce that idea to you. Okay, so the soul. So this is the overarching idea that we're talking about here. So just bringing everything back to just the overarching ideas. So the soul is trapped or entombed in the flesh, which is Osiris. That's what Osiris means. We are, our bodies are the tomb for the soul. Okay. Ancient Egyptians taught that the higher organism must die and give up life to the lower organism, which is our physical body. The soul gave up its freedom to become blind and dumb or forget who it was while it was entering into the flesh. All right. So there is a cycle of endless incarnations of death and rebirth or resurrection out of the physical body. So this is not the only life that we're going to have. We live over and over. And I get so many people that I see talking about the ancestors, and they only look at it from one perspective, that the ancestors were our African ancestors. Guys, I hate to shock you here. No, I don't. I don't hate to shock you. But you've lived as many different races. You have to. Your ancestors are not only the African ancestors. Now you might be more connected to them, to the African ancestors, through your physical experience now, but I can guarantee you that you've lived as every other race, okay, on this earth. And you live as beings that are not on this earth, okay? That's a more elevated understanding. We're talking about ideas that they transcend not only earthly physical existence, but we're talking about they work throughout the universe on whatever level that you're on, okay? Yeusa, or Jesus, is simply the natural concept of perpetual renewal, okay? Or as the ancients stated, being born again. So in other words, Yeusa, or Jesus, is the idea of something being able to return, being able to reduce itself. So that's one of the reasons why we hear that Jesus is always returning. Well, that's what the principle represents before we turn it into something else, okay? So in modern terms, the Osiris-Christ connection, or Osir-Christ connection. So while physical, you can gain awareness of your God self or higher Ka. While being buried in the tomb, you are blind or dead. The tomb, again, being your body, okay? It is through the principle of Yeusa, or Jesus, that you are resurrected from the dead or the tomb of the body and blindness, darkness, ignorance, etc. Okay? So through that principle, you are able to be reborn and reconnect with your higher self when you become aware. Okay? As a new enlightened soul, you become reborn into the transformed Christ that was the dead Osiris, or the unaware individual that you were born in. Okay, so we were born unaware. That line. Okay, and we can stay stuck in that unawareness if we so choose. Okay, and the ancient Egyptians also had a term for that, for people that never wake up, is that the soul comes down and dies, okay? But for people that never wake up, they die the second death, okay? So that was their term for somebody that never became aware of themselves as a soul. They died a second death. They never lived in their elevated level of consciousness, okay? So the overarching concept of Yeusa, or Jesus, okay? So on one level, and again, I'm talking, these are many different levels that these symbols are on. So we don't want to get into the idea that you are, if you can hang on minutes, I can't really see your questions. If you can hang on right afterwards, I'd love to answer the questions, okay? What was I saying here? Okay, so the idea of Yeusa is the idea of the potential in the tomb or mummy that of the physical body, or it's the seed of potential. Okay, so within us is the seed to become enlightened. All right. I think a really good symbol of that is the yin and yang sign, where you see the circle with the little dot in it, the black circle and the white circle. That's the seed that is in each of those aspects. Okay. What is the tomb paradoxically, or the tomb is paradoxically, no, let me restate that. What we know as the tomb, as the physical body, is paradoxically the womb for our rebirth or resurrection. Okay. You are in the womb now, or are you asleep? Do you remain dead, unaware of your potential as God, goddess? Okay. So you have the potential to move to a higher level of being and a higher level of thinking. Okay. Uh, so let me bring this down. So I'm getting ready to wrap it up here, but let me bring this down to the personal level. Okay. So basically, you are on the path, on the Osirian path. You have a life theme in this incarnation. So you came here to learn something. Now, there are many different layers to your life theme, okay? But you came here to learn something, okay? You are to assimilate life experience, resurrect, and elevate consciously into your Christ state of expanded awareness. The worst thing you can do daily is live a life in fear and trying to avoid physical experience, or trying to avoid certain experiences, trying to avoid getting hurt. That's one of our relationships is one of the biggest things that transform us. And a lot of times we can fall in love, we can get hurt, and then we don't want to try again. We're afraid to try again. Okay. And you literally have to have courage to love a second time. That when you do that and you gain the ability to do that, you rise, you elevate your consciousness, because you have transformed into a being that is able to love again and to try again. Okay. And because of the wisdom that you gain from the hurt, you're able to apply that in your new relationship. All right. So that's what Christianity has taught us to do, has taught us to basically try to avoid certain experience. So certain things are sinful, certain things are immoral, but that's thinking on the level of man. We want to take the ideas of the laws of mankind and apply them to universal existence and universal experience, and it doesn't work. Okay, it's not the same. Excuse me. So on a personal level, it means that you must resurrect your spirit while in flesh. Okay. That means reorient your perspective to one of being multidimensional energy rather than a physical body. And let me tell you, that is huge. When you start to think of yourself and you consider yourself as energy, as an energy being, and not just a physical body, you literally disconnect from a lot of what's going on in the world when you can consider yourself as a physical body. Okay. I'm sorry, as an energetic body. This virus and stuff that's going around, guys, you literally, when you tap into the fear and all the stuff that's going around about the coronavirus, you literally tap into tribal, lower level energetic thoughts. You are vibrationally operating at a lower level, and you're operating away from your Christ self. Okay. And that's not to say that you should not be cautious, because our beliefs are our beliefs, and sometimes they're so deeply ingrained, or like layers of an onion. We have to peel them back a little bit at a time. So you don't just go from believing one thing one day and then believing another thing the other day and not having those residual psychological effects. Okay. So that means so reorienting yourself to an energetic being, or thinking as energy first, is one of the first things that you can do to elevate yourself. Okay. An energetic vibrational being. Once you begin experiencing life from an energetic level, you can begin to connect with your God self through expanded awareness in the physical. Okay. These ideas have been expressed biblically, but we were fooled into thinking of the ideas as a miracle of dying. As a miracle of dying and being resurrected in the same body. Okay. That was absurd then, just as absurd as it is now. Okay. People didn't believe it then. All right. So resurrecting as a Christ. So becoming a Christ cannot be done by avoiding personal experience. You have to go through the fire, so to speak, in order to be reborn. That is literally, well, I won't say it's literal. Going through that fire is your baptism. Your baptism to being raised to a higher spiritual level. Okay? Christianity has done a disservice by labeling certain behaviors as sinful, moral, or immoral. There are There absolutely positively are consequences to all your behaviors and all your actions. But the punishment is not hell. Okay. The reward is not heaven. All those things are aspects of us right now. Okay. Really and truly, our hell is here on earth. Okay. What we're living through and going through is the hell for so many of us. All right. As a soul, life is all experience that enlightens that soul. So you learn through your experience. And as a soul, you learn through opposites. Okay. If you want to learn self-love, guess what? You're going to have your butt beat up and put down and just derided about who you are until one day you stand up and say, that's enough. I'm going to love who I am and I don't care about who you are. That's what you're going to go through before you gain that self-love. Okay. That's how the soul learns. It goes through the opposite in the physical in order to gain that wisdom as a soul. Okay. Your experience must be assimilated vibrationally. Again, when you start to look at yourself as an energetic being, it is definitely about you vibrationally connecting to the world and understanding how to connect and how to do that vibrationally. And that's where a lot of us fall short. We don't know how to do that. Okay. It's really simple, but a lot of times we don't know. So any vibrations that resonate on the side of fear separates us from the ability to reconnect higher Ka or God's self for the expanded awareness. So it's like you can think of when you're feeling good, if you think of the knowledge that's coming from the higher realms as like a big round hose or a conduit. Okay. Well, when you're in joy, that conduit is huge. Okay. But when you're in fear, that conduit shrinks to like the size of a little water hose. And the knowledge and information, it can't get through. You're literally constricting yourself from your higher realm and from your higher being. So fear is definitely one of those things that we have to assimilate and get beyond here in this physical world. Okay. So summing it up, all right. So the body is the tomb or womb, the mummy, the casket for the soul. The resurrection or the resurrection of Osiris via the Christ is the representation of the soul being resurrected from the dead state of being unaware in the physical body. That's just one level, okay? The spiritual science means as a soul being reborn on the cross to live life. Going back to that again, there has to be 4 elements that come together to produce physical life, anything. And because those elements come together, the soul that is born through those elements and descends into physical matter dies. It gives up its freedom, its awareness, its unlimited awareness in order to inhabit the physical body and in order to raise the physical body. Okay. Because you live this life, you're already saved. Okay. So we've been taught as Christians that to believe in Jesus is salvation. No, Jesus, you're already the experience of Yehusa or Jesus because you're living and you're already saved. So live life, man. Live life fearless, guiltless, shameless. Okay. Learn and gain wisdom from it. Learn and gain wisdom from your experiences and through your experiences. And don't be afraid to experience. Okay. You have to go through the fire in order to grow wisdom. Okay. You have to. It just doesn't happen any other way. Okay. So how do you begin your Christ journey? So one is by becoming more aware and enlightened. Okay. Open up, be expansive. There's a lot of guys, I'm telling you, what I am talking about right now is the base level. This is like, I mean, there's so much out there. It's incredible. And we have to open up ourselves to these ideas. And when you do that, you will live life more fruitfully, abundantly, more joyfully. It gives you a freedom that you never had. And when I know I've talked to people, some here on this in this chat, that have lived as Christians, just like I did, that we live in a prison and a cage. We had to check through everything and everybody before we could do anything. Okay, that is a cage. You had to basically okay living your life through these ideas that were so contradictory that they confused you all day, every day. That's a cage. Okay, so by learning how to reorient your thinking to the level of the soul, as a multidimensional, energetic being, you will gain more awareness. You will become more free. You will become more empowered. Okay? So I do have on my site at Kemetic Centered Living, I do have a course, an e-course called The Ultimate Guide to the Egyptian Spiritual Science, that basically teaches you how to orient yourself energetically. Okay? And it teaches you how to just the ideas of like prayer. That's something that as Christians, once we move away from that, one of the questions people ask is, how do I pray? Who do I pray to? Okay. You are so powerful, you don't even, okay? Most of us, we don't even know it. So I really get into the practical application. What is God? Okay. The idea of Yehusa or Jesus, the idea of the what's the triangle? I'm trying to think of the triangle. Good grief, I'm drawing a blank. But anyway, so all of that, all of that stuff, I get into the practical application of it. Okay, so so it's on my site. If you go to the main site, you can go to the product page, and it'll tell you all about the course and everything. Okay, so I can open it now for questions, and thank you for sitting and listening. And go ahead, and if you need some clarification, please ask, okay? Let's see, Jay Saxman, they said it wasn't until about 6 years ago I finally opened up. Okay. The Trinity, yeah, thank you, Juanita. The Trinity, that's the word I was trying to think of. All right, did I explain that like, man, clear and concise? So no questions about resurrection or how Jesus and or Yehusa and Osiris. Okay, it's the site name. It's KemeticCenteredLiving.com. So KemeticCenteredLiving.com is the site, and that's with K. Kemetic is spelled with KH. So KemeticCenteredLiving.com. All right. Well, I guess if nobody has any more questions, then you're most welcome. Welcome. Yes, Adrian, it is a lot to chew on. I agree. And like I said, this is just the tip of the iceberg, man, and it's so powerful. So, so Juanita, so we get bits and pieces of this, and so Juanita asked how the elements have to cross to produce life. We get bits and pieces of it through astrology, through numerology, but again, they're so disconnected. We don't always see what they mean. But the ancients named the elements fire, which means desire. Okay, and so in other words, in order to manifest anything, and I go into a little bit deeper of this in my course, but in order to produce anything, there has to be desire. Okay, that's fire. So a lot of times, sexuality or sex was symbolized as this desire. Air, which is actually spirit. Okay. Then there has to be, see, fire, air, water, which is basically that everything exists in all possibilities. Okay. And then there is earth, which is matter. So those four elements have to come together in order to produce anything that is physical. So anything that we can experience, touch, walk on, look at, it's all conscious. All of that is conscious. That is life to the ancient Cometians. Everything that is conscious that we can experience is life. And there is nothing that does not have those four elements within it. And those four elements have the ability to reproduce itself to produce other experience. That's what Yahushua or Jesus is about. So Jesus died on the cross as an aspect of the Creator in order to live in a physical body, in order for us to live. But when it died, it became less aware and less conscious. Okay. So did that make sense? Did I explain it okay? All right. Okay, guys. Well, okay. Thank you, Juanita. See, how do elements? Man, hold on, because I didn't see that last question. How do elements have the cross to create? How do the elements have the cross? Now that's getting so deep, Juanita. How they have the cross? Man, that would take a whole class by itself. I mean, that stuff is like crazy. Yes, I'm familiar with Ray Hagen's. So familiar with his teachings. So his was some of the stuff that I first cut my teeth on. So I really he inspired me to research and do a lot of what I'm doing now. So he's a great teacher. So I really love his scholarship. So that's why when I'm researching, it's important for me to be able to back up what I'm talking about. So I hate it when people basically do just like the church did. Well, just have faith. Just believe what I'm telling you. You know, no. Ask me where I got it from. So when I'm doing my articles on my website and my courses, I'm telling you where I get it from. Okay. So yeah, so great, good teachings. So from Ray Hagens, definitely. All right, guys. Well, it's coming on a little bit after an hour, so I wanted to cut this out. Let's see, are we light trap? That's one way to look at it, Menace. The magnetic field. There's different ways that the ancient Egyptians look at it, but we are trapped by what they call the force of Set. Okay. So set means opposition. So when we're trapped in this body, set is what traps us. Okay. All right, Cherie, thank you very much. Juanita, thank you. Ashe to everyone. All right. Well, y'all have a wonderful day. Okay. What was the life of the soul before the first death? So that's the soul that's the soul in the metaphysical world. Okay. So that's the life, that's the first life. Okay. So life is actually when it first comes into being as a soul. All right. So when it descends into the physical body, that's death. But if you don't become aware and you never connect to your higher self, that's the second death. All right. Okay, guys. Well, y'all have a great day. Have a great rest of the day and be safe. All right. Bye bye now.